Good afternoon and good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the INRIX webinar on freight data, how data can support truck parking, supply chain logistics, cross-border trade, and more. Thanks everyone for joining, and we apologize for the late start. We have with us today three great guests. Desiree Wood from Real Women in Trucking, Hubert Clay from the University of Maryland Cat Lab, and Alex Venerovsky from Spatial Risk Systems. And we're going to talk through, three different use cases of how to use trucking and supply chain and logistics data, both for the public sector and for private sector customers. But just to get started really quickly, I'm gonna just give a high-level overview of INRIX data and what we do, generally speaking, and then we'll dive deeper into the use cases. All right, great. So we have a clever little name here, Freighty Cats. We're talking about freight data. But INRIX has been around for about 20 years, and we produce mobility intelligence for the trucking industry, traffic, passenger vehicles. But we have a very long history of producing really, really in-depth data all about transportation and transportation analytics. One thing we like to just kind of do some table setting on when we talk about specifically what we call location intelligence or truck data itself. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. All right. Or truck data itself is we like to do some level setting on what this type of data actually means. So our trips data and our freight data is really on the far left side here. It's observed data. So these are our actual observations we saw from vehicles, real latitude and longitude points that we saw from actual vehicles that we saw on the road. This is not a modeled output. It is not normalized, right? We're not providing more detailed insights there. We're giving pure observations and letting people analyze those pure observations in the way that they see fit. So so our TRIPS product is, like I said, is an observed product where we produce lots of different types of TRIPS products, but it all comes down to the fact that we produce individual trips, or what we call trip paths, which it's not a waypoint. It is not a GPS point. It is a set of segments by which a driver of a freight vehicle used which OSM segments that they drove on, when they entered and exited those segments, when they stopped, things of that sort. So you can see a lot of the metadata here. We have a really high penetration rate in the freight world. We have different classifications of vehicles, and we have even more detailed classifications in some of our providers than just medium and heavy vehicles, but also getting down to vehicle classes in some instances. And you see some of the other metadata there as far as when it's available and how often, and what our typical ping frequency and things are. We also have parking products. So we have the biggest database of parking in the world, both on-street and off-street parking. And we have other urban freight type of solutions that we provide through our Road Rules product, which is going to come in hand later on when we talk about truck parking, where we mix our trips data and parking data together to get a better understanding of trucking. Some of the other use cases that we have, this is an example in Rhode Island where partnering with Cat Lab, we delivered some origin destination data for the state of Rhode Island, because they were really concerned about freight movements within specific communities, and looking for where to prioritize investments in freight within those communities. Also in New York City during COVID, we did both a macro and micro level analysis, or the city did both macro and micro level analysis to understand where you know, a lot of freight does not originate in New York City. It comes into the city. So they wanted to understand, where is that coming and going from? What did that look like pre-COVID? What did that look like post-COVID? And they wanted it to pin it down, not just to what you see on the screen here, which is a really high level. I believe these are counties that are shown on the screen. They wanted to pin it down even to neighborhoods. So you see that the chart there in the middle is actually a neighborhood level view. Then finally, we also do cross-border insights, especially right now with the disruptions in the supply chain. People want to understand, what does freight look like crossing borders, whether it be associated with tariffs or what's going on elsewhere in the world, to really understand how many vehicles are coming across the borders, what types of vehicles they are, things of that ilk, and getting this information well before it's available more publicly. That's just a high level overview of some of our INRIX freight level products. We're going to get into a lot more detail with the panelists here about what else you can do and what use cases you can perform with this data. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to make Desiree a presenter. And so our first guest here is Desiree Wood. Desiree is the founder and president of Real Women in Trucking, which is a 501c6 advocacy organization for women truck drivers. She herself is a truck driver and has had her license since 2007. She's driven all over the country. I think one of her proudest moments is that she was a major advocate and grassroots organizer for Jason's Law, which she will explain in her presentation here, and is a major change that's happening in the trucking industry, especially when it comes to truck parking. And then finally, she's also a freight planner at the Nevada Department of Transportation. So she's kind of worn all of the hats, and we're really excited to have Desiree here to present with us. And so with that, Desiree, I'll turn it to you. Desiree, I think you're still muted.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. I think you just need to switch your screen back to the presentation.
Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Desiree Wood. I'm a former truck driver, and I'm now a freight planner in Nevada, but I formed an organization called Real Women in Trucking, and through that work, I got very involved in truck parking. I also sit on some panels and committees with the Transportation Research Board, the Standing Committee on Freight Planning, Logistics, and Modeling. Actually, it's AT012, it changed. And so I got involved with the truck parking while I was a truck driver in 2009. I became aware of a murder of a driver by the name of Jason Rivenberg. Jason was early to deliver a load of milk in South Carolina. A common practice at shippers and receivers is that they do not let you park on site, but they require you to be there on time for very strict appointments. So drivers are always trying to stage as close as possible to the place they're picking up and delivering. And that's what Jason did. While he was there, he parked at an abandoned gas station down the street. A teenager came by and saw $7 on his dashboard and shot him for it. At the time, his wife, Hope, was pregnant with twins, and the couple already had a 2-year-old named Josh. And Hope gave birth to the twins 14 days later and immediately started a petition drive called Jason's Law. Jason's Law is now a law in the Transportation Code, and it made truck parking an eligible activity for funding. So you can see Hope up there, and in that proclamation picture, that's Nicole Katsakides, and she did the first Jason's Law survey for FHWA, and she's kind of engineered the freight planning, how the states do the freight planning, and how it all works since Jason's Law passed. So there's 4 reasons that truck drivers park. home time. A lot of drivers have to stay out on the road for a minimum of 3 weeks just to get to come home for 3 days. But when they come home, they need a place to park their equipment, and it needs to be somewhere safe. They also need it to shut down for emergencies. If there's a mechanical failure, they need somewhere to park. And then they have a federally required 10-hour sleeper break, and the staging that we just talked about. When trucks are not parked where they should be, they become a crime scene because people come and they want to rob you or they want to steal the freight. So it makes sense to have trucks parked where they should be. These are crime scene photos from Jason Rivenberg in the center. The top one is a guy by the name of Michael Bagelin. His wife too was pregnant when he was murdered. These people came to rob him and he wouldn't open the doors and they lit him on fire inside the truck. And the bottom one is my own tractor right after my trailer was hijacked after I parked behind a supermarket in my neighborhood waiting, staging to deliver in the morning. So this is something that I made about freight movement in Nevada, because Nevada's always thought of as a pass-through state, but it's actually a very high consumption state, and it's a staging ground for California because there's no parking in California, and the fuel is $1 or more expensive. So a lot of drivers will sit around the Las Vegas area and around the Reno Sparks area waiting to go into California, do their delivery, pick up another load, come out, hit Nevada, fuel up again, spend some money on food, and then go on the rest of their way. A lot of people are not sure how truck drivers plan their trip, and the planning of your trip actually happens as soon as you get dispatched on a load. You don't get the starting address and the ending address though until you sign a rate contract. So it's actually kind of when you're in the loading dock that you start mapping this out. You try to find out which is the quickest route, but also which is the route that's not prone to any winter weather or high winds or something that's going to delay you. So the basics on hours of service are you can drive 11 hours, and then you must stop for 10 to sleep. And that 11 hours of driving has to take place within a 14-hour window. There's a couple of variations, which I'll talk about in a minute, but basically you're mapping out what is the furthest that I can go today with the hours that I have available within a radius. So of course you want to maximize your miles because you're getting paid by the mile, but whether in traffic, you might not make it that far. And then there's certain regional issues like the Jackson, Georgia flag. If you can't get past Atlanta, you should not go past Jackson, Georgia. You must be able to pass through that area in one shift or you're going to get stuck. So these are just things that you learn as you become a driver. And the same on the delivery end over in Sumner, Washington. This is actually a load of fish oil capsules that I did from Boca Raton, and I mapped it out to show people. So even though I'm not going to particularly land in any of these towns, I want to get as close to there as possible. And then I have to take into consideration, is there even any truck parking around there? I know I'm going to run out of hours around there, but is there anywhere that I can park? That's when I'm going to get out my truck parking app that's in the lower left there, and I'm going to map out the same route and find out what is available around there and what my radius is, where I shouldn't pass through or I'm going to get stuck. So you'll see I made a note up there in the upper left. It's 38 miles from the last place that you can park in North Bend, Washington, and it's going to take 54 minutes to get to my delivery. This area is prone to avalanches and snow shutdowns. That's kind of the only truck stop around there. You have to pay for parking like over a week in advance, and that still doesn't guarantee you're going to have a spot. So this is an area that's very much lacking. So what I did with the macro study with this stop trucks is I wanted to kind of look a little bit more at Nevada. because I can drive around and I know where trucks park around Southern Nevada where I live, and I could kind of look at this proof of concept demonstration and focus on this area where I can explore with a first pass study these limited days and kind of, see what it looks like to me. I got back 10,141 parking events of Class 7 and Class 8 heavy and medium duty trucks, and 6,329 of them in Clark County where I live during these 6 days. And what jumped out to me was how many dots were around residential areas, not traditional logistics industrial centers or truck stops, what we would call authorized less risky truck parking. The other thing is that, 15 years ago, it was hard to get a job as a truck driver if you lived in Las Vegas because there was no freight coming out of here. But that's changed a lot because they have attracted a lot of logistics and warehousing to Nevada now. So we do have a lot of drivers who are residents. And when I looked at this query image, I could see that. And one of the reasons that drivers do park splattered all over the valley is because a lot of employee drivers are issued a piece of equipment, but they are not reimbursed for paid parking, and they need to keep an eye on it. Like my own truck, that the trailer got hijacked. That's what I was attempting to do. Because they're not reimbursed for it, they don't want to pay the out-of-pocket expense. So it makes it kind of a sketchy situation. Nevada's pretty cool right now about trucks parking on side streets, but there are a few neighborhoods where residents start complaining and then it starts getting bad and signs start getting put up. So I took that into consideration, and also in my filters, I wanted to look at the other rules of hours of service, which are not just the drive 11, stay put for 10 sleeper berth, but also the 8 and 2 rule and the 7 and 3 rule, which are the current variations. Drivers also have a 30-minute break, but that's not really as hard to get as these long sleeper breaks. So in my filters, you can see that I looked at these different number of hours to let me know that they were doing one of these forms of these hours of service flexibility rules. And like I said, fuel is a lot cheaper in Nevada than it is in California. So it let me see that a lot of drivers are stopping here and staging here or sleeping here before they move on to the west or return back to the east. For this one, I looked a little bit closer at some of the parking events at places that I would know that they're going to be parked at, truck stops that I know of, but still that's splattering all over the valley. And that made me think that this would be like a good candidate for a city model like Elmira, New York. This is a lot that's been around for about 15 years now. And the idea was to get the trucks out of residential areas and convert an old park and ride with a kiosk and not gouge the drivers, but charge them a really nominal fee to have a clean and safe place to park that self-sustains itself for ongoing maintenance. So it's kind of a good example of how you can raise revenue without gouging the drivers, and understand where these parts of these residential areas could be good candidates. As I said, paid truck parking is a luxury for the privileged, but there's a value to having this freight in a secure place. And a lot of what I believe is an increase of ramp parking. Oops, I went over. An increase of ramp parking is because a lot of paid parking is getting taken out right now. And you have a lot of drivers that don't know how to park in a crowded truck stop. So they'll just park on the ramp. And then there's people that are just kind of protesting all of the the previously paid spots that are being taken out, and they're being charged $20 to $40 for it, for a spot that used to be free. So this was my closer look to Clark County and kind of District 1 to see where trucks were parked. I did identify areas near entertainment like casinos where I know drivers would come in and they would park around the casino where they could walk to it on a side street so they could get some food, or some casinos have truck parking where you can rent a room, but there's always usually some side streets. You see a lot of trucks parked on the weekends when, you know, there's a football game on, or they want to treat themselves to a dinner. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for Southern Nevada to study those kinds of opportunities. I did find a couple of gaps, and they were in areas that might be related to the Air Force restricted airbase. I wasn't quite sure. This image down here in the lower left is an actual truck stop. So of course I would expect a lot of spots in that little area. But then I was surprised that I didn't see any at this Native American travel plaza that has about 175 truck parking spaces, but didn't get any trips. And I didn't know if that has to do with the Nellis Air Force airspace around there. So that was something interesting. And then I quickly looked at Northern Nevada, which validated what I know to be as a truck driver, is that you stage as close as you can to the state line and get everything you need, because you want to get in and out of California as fast as possible and then restock back in Nevada. However, I did find a little gap near USA Parkway that I want to look into further because in another query, I did get a lot of trips in that area. So this again shows on the California side where that 21 is, that's California, and that is mountains. There's nowhere to park. You literally need to make it all the way to Sacramento before you can find a place to park, and that kind of shows me what I know to be true as a driver. So that's my presentation. I really found this beta test promising and exciting, and I think there's a lot that people can learn about their own city and state, about truck parking, where these trucks are going, and what they're doing, and try to figure out some opportunities to get them where they should be.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you, Desiree. There's a lot of great insights there. Really appreciate you taking the time to share. If folks have any questions for Desiree, please, there's a little box up at the top with a question mark in it. Feel free to share your questions there. Our next guest is Hubert Clay from the University of Maryland Cat Lab. Hubert has quite a bit of experience both on the public and private sector side, working in operations and in planning for different transportation oversight and real-time events. With that, I'm gonna turn it to Hubert, who is gonna walk us through some of the Cat Lab tools.
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Hubert Clay. I'm with the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Laboratory, the Cat Lab. And what we'll be talking about today is a little insight into RIDIS trip analytics analysis of precise truck parking data sets from INRIX. What is RIDIS is how we'll start things. We'll look at the underlying data set that INRIX is providing. It's a developmental data set that we're excited to look at and work with. And then I will take a look at the actual RIDIS trip analytics analysis module. Some of what Desiree showed actually uses the RIDIS tool set, so I can give you a look behind the scenes of how that is done and the system that supports it. RIDIS is the Regional Integrated Transportation Information System. It is a data fusion engine, decision support system. It is a system that is built from the ground up by the CAT Lab. We are a research entity under the School of Engineering at the University of Maryland. And this allows us to play a key and critical role for the many agencies we serve. We're active with all 50 states in some fashion and also internationally. And what RITIS does is it takes multiple inputs and fuses them and then outputs them in ways to allow for situational awareness, performance monitoring, cost benefit analysis, prioritization of investments, and also modeling and validation for planning applications. There are some API hooks in there for real-time data and analytics. And again, it is really the best in class in terms of what can be done with this, and the fact that it's supported by an independent research entity allows it to be a very powerful tool for the partners that we serve. The underlying data set, as I mentioned, the truck parking data set is in the refinement stage of development by INRIX. They have asked us to take a look at it and give us the opportunity to build some tools that will leverage it. And INRIX is a partner that we work with very often, as INRIX is involved in serving a lot of public agencies and DOTs, so is the CAT Lab, and that gives us opportunities to work together quite often. This data set is interesting because we are faced with how to best understand what it's giving us. So we've asked INRIX to give us parking events that last 15 minutes at a minimum. And the way that we receive this data is GPS pings that come to us from INRIX. It's a location, coordinates data, latitude, longitude. And when we receive the parking event data, this is a 12-hour parking event that's being illustrated here on the screen. There are 440 pings that came about as part of this 12-hour parking event. And if you look at them, that ping pyramid sort of gives you an example of where the actual locations might appear. There's a little bit of GPS drift that's just part and parcel of the GPS technology. It's not a flaw in any fashion. But that little bit of drift makes it such that you've got a thinner scatter, thin layers in the periphery, and then at the center, a very deep, very concentrated layer of pings. In this case, 112 pings were dead center, and they were spread out around in the fashion that you can see off on the right there. And that distribution also points out that 112 pings really sits pretty much dead center to where the cab of the truck would be and the sensor would be. So we're very comfortable saying that that's a parking event. Then defining that parking event, we'll look at the timestamps, and we will say, well, what's the earliest timestamp? That's when the parking event began, and the latest timestamp is when the parking event ended. Some other things that we're doing to test out the data, basic travel time analysis. So we are taking travel time information based upon the end of one parking event, the start of another. In this case, we've got, this is south of Boston, where a parking event ended at 12:56, and then we're able to see that the next one started here at this time. It's 52 minutes in between. We then take that information and compare it to Google Maps, because that's very easy to obtain and fairly reliable. And we get from Google Maps that that origin destination pair with similar routing, comparable routing, typically takes about 40 minutes to an hour, 5 minutes. And that 52 minutes falls right in there. We're very comfortable with that. That's what we would expect to see. Then what we're doing is we're doing some large scale analysis where we're plotting out and looking at clusters of plots. So this is from Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, we see clusters in areas where you would expect to see them. Parking events that are in facilities where we know trucks are gathering or parking and where they're supposed to park. Even in places like up here on the right, where you don't see necessarily that there's a facility. When you zoom in on the satellite map imagery, you can see that there is actually some pavement that's off on the shoulder, maybe a truck inspection area where trucks actually are parking based on the satellite photography. That matches up perfectly to what we're seeing from the pings. So again, it's comfortable, it's reasonable, it's what we would expect to see. Dwell time is another place where we're sort of taking a look and holding it up to the lights and saying, well, does this make sense to us? It does across the board. We're very happy with what we're seeing. This example is a truck parking event. This is also up in the Massachusetts area, up in Framingham on the Service Plaza. At 11:10 a.m. it started. The truck event looks very much like it's parked at the fuel pump. 22 minutes for a refueling break makes perfect sense to us. It's consistent with what we would observe in real world observations. And then we also can look at the other observations in truck parking events and make sure that they make sense with what we think is probable and realistic. Again, we're seeing what we're comfortable with. No issues as far as we can tell with our initial observation and analysis of the data itself. RIDIS Trip Analytics Analysis is a module within the RIDIS product. This is in the feature building stage of development too. RIDIS Trip Analytics exists, many states use it, but since we're taking on this new data set, we're building out some features to take the best advantage of it. We also want to develop strategies to infer for the use cases we'd like to explore that rest area parking is at capacity. So it was mentioned earlier on that we've got about a 20% penetration rate nationally across all road classes for this data set, and that's outstanding. It's good. I've got nothing bad to say about that penetration rate. We would love more. I know NRIX is always looking for new data sources and pulling them in where they can, but that 20% means that we can't necessarily assume capacity and when a parking area is full up. It's statistically significant for many things, but for capacity analysis, we're not able to say this is full because we're not necessarily sure. And as a matter of fact, we're pretty sure that we're not getting 100% of the penetration. So we'll look at how we're handling that and also some micro and level analyses and broad state inspections as quick examples of use cases that we could support. What we're doing is we're asking the questions of, can risky parking behaviors near mainline freeway traffic reveal when the preferred parking is full? We think yes. And can we use a custom land use zone layer to report levels of risk near an interstate rest area? Again, we feel very strongly yes. So what we have here, this is actually a truck parking area on I-95 in Maryland, not too far from where I'm at this moment in time. I drive past here on the way to and from work every day. The lowest risk makes sense would be in the actual parking area. More risky areas would be along the on and off ramps where there is traffic moving by as a truck might be parked on the shoulder. And the highest risk is where there's just a truck parked on the shoulder, either upstream or downstream from the parking area, where you're directly adjacent to mainline traffic and vehicles moving at speed. We're able to take GIS tools and build a shapefile to define this and break this down so that we can quantify and label the different zones. So we can take the least risky parking behavior inside the lots and label them as parking lot within that GIS land use field. We can take the shoulder parking on the ramps as on ramp and off ramp, label them as such, classify them as such within the GIS file. And then most risky areas without the buffer lane, label them as such. We can save this within that shapefile as a GIS resource for use in loading into our analysis within RIDIS. And that'll be very valuable. I'll show you where that comes into play. And then also these classifications of land use are going to be useful in sorting and providing some in-depth analysis of the different types of parking events that we will come across. So sample microanalysis. This is the RIDIS tool. I'm not going to run a full demo. I can just run you through quickly what it looks like. So opening up, we'll create a study. The truck parking data set is a national data set. It's available in all 50 states. We could limit that though, but we're not going to bound it. because we're not looking at trips that start and end someplace right now. We're just looking at trips that are in a single location, so we're not going to bound that area. We could load in a spatial filter to find all the parking events around the rest area, so we could define this spatial area. And this is built upon a GIS file that we saved previously. This is that I-95 Maryland area that we talked about just a moment ago, with the different roadway classifications and land use classifications for safe versus risky. And for this example, I'm also going to, and what I did is we added a second spatial filter, and this polygon, this shape file, is just drawn in manually. You're able to go in and click out the vertices of the polygon to say, I want to look at this area as well. This is actually an area a little bit further south on I-95. Gaskins Road is a park and ride in Virginia, and the DOT in that area has been having issues with trucks parking in what is supposed to be a park and ride commuter lot. So we're going to add that to this study to see if we can get some detailed micro level analysis for that also. The time frame is November 10th to 16th. That's 7 days. That's been loaded by INRIX for us for beta testing use. We'll choose all days and times because we could sort for granular temporal filtering later on within the results dashboard. I'll show you that. And even though we only have this 1 week of time, I know that INRIX is actually committed to, for our testing purposes, to provide all of March 2026 and part of April 2026 as well. So as that becomes available, we'll begin to test against that. But this 1 week in time still gives us the ability to get some very good and interesting results. So running it, and it takes a few minutes because we're looking at hundreds of thousands, easily millions of points of data. We get 329 parking events within those 2 shape files, the Gaskins Road, which we're looking at now, and also I-95 in Maryland, which we'll look at in just a moment. The nice tell that we see here is that there are 329 parking events that come up within that 1 week time. Only 2 of them are here in Gaskins Road. So where they were concerned about truck parking within the park and ride, it seems like enforcement efforts are being effective. If we had a larger span of time, we could do a before and after. This is the after though, and the after looks like it's been very effective as far as what they're doing for enforcement. Zooming in to the I-95 area, we get the other 327 of the 329 events. They're all here. They're represented as dots and pings. The data behind these is shown in the bar charts here. These tables reflect the land use distribution. So most of these are in the parking lot area. That's great. That's probably the safest area. And then we get a few that are on the on and off ramps, and the freeway shoulders. You can get information about the vehicle weight classes that's available, what day of the week these have occurred across that 7-day span. It looks like Thursday is the busiest day for parking, the weekends not so much, and then even the hour of the day. So you get a spike here in the early morning where there's a lot of parking events, a little bit through the midday, and then through the afternoon going off into the evening. We have parking events there that show more of our longer term parking events. They're represented here with the pink color. So we can infer there that maybe we're getting more sleep breaks or long-term rest breaks here in the afternoon and going into the evening hours. And we can sort across the top here for day of the week, time of day, the date range, tightening that up. Could sort by duration, which Desiree showed. Could sort by weight class, the different classifications of land use that we defined for this specific query, and rotation policy. Briefly, rotation policy, this is important. Many truck fleets have rules about rotation. That's the time frame that the specific identifier, the electronic identifier for a sensor, a vehicle probe, rotates, and that can be done for operational security or for driver privacy. Different fleets and different providers have different rules there. In order to make sure that that doesn't cloud our data analysis, we can sort and filter and select for that. And then also you can go within the tables here, the bar charts, and do sort and filtering. So you can dynamically filter. What I'll do here is deselect some of the shorter term parking events and click through. And as you see, if we take out everything that's under 5 hours, going back and forth, you reduce the parking events from 329 to 66. And the tables for day of the week show you that the parking events have gone down. We're still showing most of them in the parking lot area. And the distribution across vehicle weight classes and things like that adjust dynamically. So you're seeing dynamic movement for both the charts and tables, as well as the map and the total parking events based upon our changes. Statewide exploration, I'm going to run through this quickly because I know we're running tight on time. Virginia, statewide, we do a statewide query. We get almost 400,000 parking events. That makes sense. Each of the dots on the map there is a parking event, and the shading sort of goes along with the density of the cluster sizes. We have the tables along the right, again, with the bar charts that are very telling. We could sort across various issues in terms of the query parameters that we're looking at. If I choose to click in the bars themselves, I could adjust the query parameters. And this is really just a tight look at a port area using the map image of a port within Virginia. And if you see here, the parking events that we're picking up, they're clustered across a 1 week period here where they would be picking up containers or freight. The other telling thing, and Desiree mentioned this, you see a lot of trucks that are parked up here, queued up on the access road. That's because they can't be too early, they can't be too late, so they need a place to hang around. And oftentimes that's the access road here right outside of the port facility. If you want more information, Greg Jordan is the lead on this. My name is Hubert Clay. Both our contact information is in here. This will be available as part of the slide deck that's shared. And I do appreciate your time, and I will pass it on to the next presenter.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hubert. Our next presenter is Alex Vengorovsky, who is the founder of Spatial Risk Systems, which is a data analytics platform at the intersection of fintech, supply chains, and geospatial intelligence. I'm going to cut it off there because I want to give as much time to Alex as possible to give his presentation. So Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmett, and thank you everybody for listening. I know we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to be fairly quick. Let me just spend a few seconds introducing our company. SRS was created 5 years ago, and the motivation for that was to close one of the remaining gaps in financial services data ecosystem, which is information about physical assets. By physical assets, we understand manufacturing, warehousing, all kinds of industries that support our style of living, tunnels, bridges, airports, ports, you name it, hospitals, universities. So first few years we've spent developing the structures, developing the logic for storing and managing this data inside what we call SRS Spatial Knowledge Graph. And a couple of years ago, we started working on the specific applications and products that can provide value to, first of all, to financial communities, but also to industry players and local governments. We found that the sweet spot most likely lies in combining the data that we collect and organize, which I would call slow data because it doesn't change very often, combining this data with fast data. And that's where INRIX comes in, because it provides reasonably close to real time data about commercial truck movements, where it starts, where it's going. There's a notion of trip segments that was introduced by Ahmed. I guess it's the beginning of the session. So that's the data that we combine with our knowledge, our information about physical assets. So when it comes to questions like what are the delivery patterns to particular manufacturing plant, and what kind of activities are happening at the warehousing, we can answer those questions now. One of the first products that we worked on was what we call North America Manufacturing Supply Chain Matrix. Let me bring up the slide. Hopefully, guys, you can see that. I'll skip some marketing lingo here. Let me get straight to the pictures because they can tell you a better story. What is manufacturing supply chain matrix? Is a very simple concept. Think of it as a huge spreadsheet that connects origin of the trip with destination of the trip. And on each side of that matrix, we hang a lot of data about origin and destination. That includes the industries, that includes addresses, that includes the ownership, a bunch of other things come for a ride. By using this data, people who deal with supply chain analytics are much more equipped to discover hidden relationships, because quite often companies tend not to disclose the whole supply chain. They typically may disclose certain big players, but when it comes to small but still very important players, it's been always in the dark. So we help to light up those dark corners and help to discover relationships which otherwise wouldn't be hidden. And that's very important for securing supply chains, very important for finding alternatives for suppliers, important to understand the risk for different products, different industries, and different industry players. I don't want to forget to mention that we cover all kinds of owners of the companies. We cover public, we cover private, we cover government. That gives us 360 degrees of the whole industry, regardless of the ownership type. And when it comes to public, we do connect to the typically used market identifiers, such as FactSet identifier, or QSIP, or ISIN numbers. So let me go further. In this particular example, we looked at one of the important auto manufacturers in Mexico. Toyota opened a very big plant in there, and we were able to identify a bunch of local suppliers that have regular trips to the factory. Now we're shifting our focus to something that is very hot right now, which I would call artificial intelligence infrastructure. That includes data centers, includes semiconductor fabs, includes cooling, HVAC manufacturers, includes power generators, power backup batteries, and a bunch of other industries. We looked at, in this particular use case, we looked at the several plants which are under construction right now. And we asked the question, which particular project has a higher intensity than others? And it's not just the number of trucks that are arriving or departing from the site. We analyzed the time of the day. So when truck arrives, let's say between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. next day, or it happens during the weekend, we call it overtime time, because clearly people get paid more. And what we observed is that, at least in our example, in Skyworks, which is in Mexico, they operate practically 24/7, whereas in at Samsung plant in Texas and Intel New Albany, the picture is, let me call it, somewhat mixed. Combined with, when we'll think about this indicator and combined with overall truck traffic dynamics in and out of the construction sites, it's very tempting to create some kind of index that will inform the customer about intensity, and we have that. We call it site activity index, and it's a certain combination of those two metrics: ratio of truck traffic during overtime hours and overall truck volume. So let me shift over to some other use cases. So we looked at the structure of the supply for those construction sites. We spent significant time learning how to construct journeys out of multiple trip segments. And it appears not to be a very straightforward, easy exercise. So we spent lots of effort trying to do it reliably. And with the knowledge how to do it, we are able to see how the structure of supply changes over time and how it is different from one site to another. In order to do that, we needed to qualify different origin points based on their industry, based on activities that are taking place, whether those activities are related to the site preparation, structural constructions, or MEP. MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work. We also were able to, in a number of cases, identify traffic straight from the manufacturers of computer equipment to the sites. Not always, but it is quite possible to do it. And a similar picture, site activity indicators for the couple of sites, couple of huge data centers which are being built. I rushed into this data center business for obvious reasons. This AI infrastructure that we spend so much time talking about, and so much money being poured into this, because just that industry alone responsible for almost half of our GDP growth this year. So it's in very keen focus of financial players, and we want to provide value by giving more transparency into the dynamics of those investments. Let me flip pause. There are some other applications that are very promising. If we monitor truck traffic to certain plants, we would be able to see perhaps in advance certain signs of trouble. Probably some of you remember a couple of very loud bankruptcies in 2025. One of them was Mirelli, which is a manufacturer of auto parts. We looked at the activity at Mirelli plants during last 3 years, and we see some of the interesting indicators that even they may not predict what happened with the company, but at least they provide additional information, sufficient information to start asking questions, and that is we consider very important trigger to know more about the health of the company. And let me flip to a bunch of different use cases here and there. So I left literally 1 minute for a close, and that's what you guys see. I think by combining the capabilities of two companies, INRIX with their great trip data, and SRS with our knowledge of physical sites and activities and ownership there, we can deliver a lot of value, a lot of interesting applications and products. So let me stop here And I will bring Mike back to Ahmed.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. This is another great presentation. Thank you to everybody that presented today. There's a lot of great presentations. We did have 1 minute left, but there was, I think we answered all of the questions in the chat. But we did have one last question, Desiree. It was for you, actually, from Mohammed at WashDOT, who was asking what the website that you used or the application you used to find truck parking was when you were a driver. Oh, she already messaged me back here.
Yeah, I just replied. There is an app. There's several different apps that truck drivers use to find truck parking. The most popular one, I don't really like promoting it because we found that they were collecting data on us for reasons maybe it wasn't a good idea for us to be crowdsourcing it all the time. So it's not as reliable as it used to be when it first came out with regards to its updates on capacity availability and the time frame. But it does flag all of the spots, and that's called Trucker Path.
Fantastic. Thank you, Desiree. With that, it looks like so Donovan, I think, was asking about can you get the slideshow? So what we will do is we provide usually after the meeting, you'll get an email from us, and it'll have a recording to this webinar. So everybody will be able to see all of the slides and everything in the recordings. With that, I think thank you everybody for joining us, and sorry for us starting a little late, but we ended on time and really appreciate everyone taking the time. Thank you.